The air above had been torn by steel and howling throats, by goblin laughter turned to panic, by the rough music of survival. Now only the old timbers answered, creaking in the wind, grinding out their tired circle over a village that had already seen too much ruin. I descended beneath the roundhouse, not in triumph, but in that quieter mood which follows bloodshed, when the hand still remembers the weapon and the mind begins counting the cost. The cellar was cramped and plain, yet even such places keep their histories. Barcus Wroot had left more behind than fear. Packs and tools, small comforts, supplies gathered by careful hands, the modest wealth of one who travels under a sky that seldom shows mercy. The thought of him hanging there above us spun like a cruel jest for goblin amusement, his life reduced to a lever and a laugh. Yet he lived. That alone was no small answer to the day. Strange roads had brought us to that windmill. Stranger roads had brought him there before us. And for one brief turn of fortune, our paths had crossed in time. I took what might serve us, left the dust to settle, and climbed again toward the pale light. The village waited above, broken, watchful, not cleansed by our victory, only made quieter by it. Ferric and his pack were gone. The wargs lay still. The windmill turned on, indifferent as any old god. I had thought the fight beneath the village would be the hard lesson of the day. The Spider Queen in her black kingdom, the webs, the dark jewel drawn from that nightmare hollow. But the day had not been finished with us. It had merely changed its face. By nightfall we made camp, and the silence there was of another kind. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of people who have spent too much of themselves and must gather the pieces before morning. The fire burned low. Shadows moved across canvas and stone. Beyond its light, the wilderness kept its own counsel. Before me lay the Dark Amethyst, cold and beautiful, a fragment of midnight given weight. It seemed less a treasure than a question, not an answer in itself, but the missing word to some older sentence I had already begun to read. The tome was not with me. That troubled me more than if it had been. It had waited beneath the village, in that hidden place of dust, old craft, and locked intention. I had seen enough to know that the book and the amethyst belonged to the same design. Separate, they were curiosities. Together, they promised consequence. I did not know whether the stone was a key, a seal, or a warning made beautiful. I only watched the firelight crawl across its dark face, and understood that sooner or later I would have to return below with it in hand. The battle against the Spider Matriarch returned to me in pieces, the web giving way beneath her, the cavern answering with that dreadful fall, Shadowheart holding the line by craft rather than force, Astarion cutting opportunity out of danger with that pale smile of his, Lae'zel moving as though war itself had taught her manners, and myself, too often late in wisdom, too quick to answer fear with whatever power came first to hand. We survived, yes, but survival is a poor teacher when pride takes the lesson for victory. The gifts granted to me are not baubles to be shaken at the dark. Protection must be placed before the blade descends. Blessing must steady the hand before panic scatters it. Healing must be mercy with judgment behind it, not desperation dressed as faith. Command is not shouting louder than terror. It is knowing when a single word may bend a violent moment away from Rone. Restraint, too, has its place. Discipline, too, has its edge. I had thought too much of striking and too little of sheltering. Too much of answering the enemy and too little of preparing the soul that must endure the answer. A cleric of knowledge should know better, yet knowledge is not the same as wisdom. One fills the shelves, the other chooses the book before the house burns down. Across the camp, Lae'zel worked in the fire glow with a whetstone and a soldier's patience. There was no vanity in it, no theater, only practice, correction, repetition. She approached battle as a craft old enough to outlive kingdoms. Footing, breath, reach, timing, the brief space between an enemy's certainty and his undoing. I had seen her leap where others would hesitate, strike where others would measure twice, and still there was calculation beneath the fury. Lae'zel did not merely fight, she refined herself against danger. Shadowheart sat apart, as she often does, near enough to be counted with us, distant enough to remain her own country. There is a strength in her that does not ask to be admired. It simply endures. In the Spider Cavern, she had shown again that not every battle is won by force, nor every truth approached by a straight road. Deception, illusion, influence, the careful turning of an enemy's eye. These are not the songs bards prefer, but they have saved lives all the same. She is difficult to read, and perhaps that is part of what unsettles me. I have known soldiers who hide fear, priests who hide doubt, nobles who hide appetite. But with Shadowheart, I am less certain what is hidden and what is simply guarded because it deserves guarding. I found myself thinking of her after I meant to stop, of the calm way she stands inside danger, of the silence she keeps around old wounds, of the sharpness she offers when tenderness might betray too much. It was an uncomfortable discovery, not because she had changed, but because perhaps I had begun to. A leader should weigh all companions with fairness, yet some thoughts return without permission. Some names move nearer the fire than others. Astarion, meanwhile, made a little kingdom of steel and vials at the edge of the light. Blades checked, arrows sorted, poisons considered with the air of a man judging wine. There are methods in him I do not admire, and instincts I would not trust unguarded. Yet I would be a fool to deny his value. In the village and below it, cunning had done what strength alone could not. He sees cracks where others see walls. He hears falsehood as if it were a tune being played off-key. There are victories too ugly for songs and too useful to despise. Astarion knows that country well. There remained another matter in camp, one I had postponed not from dislike, but from caution. Wyll had stood with us, traveled with us, willing to lend his blade and name to our cause. Yet I still knew too little of the man beneath the title. The blade of frontiers is a fine thing for tavern walls and grateful villagers, but titles are lantern glass. They glow, they flatter, and they obscure the shape of the flame inside. I had not forgotten him. I had kept him in reserve. There is a difference, though perhaps not always a kind one. Wyll seemed to me like a weapon still in its scabbard, not because he lacked worth, but because I suspected the hour would come when his worth would matter greatly. Before that hour arrived, I needed to understand what hand had forged him, what oath guided him, and why his road now bent toward a woman named Karlach. So I crossed the camp toward his tent, leaving the fire behind me, and went to speak with Wyll.
The Blade of Frontiers at your calling. Karlach's fires raged in Baldur's Gate before she escaped to Avernus, as my source told it, and she was planning to return. One of the archdevil Zariel's own, chaos incarnate, a devil with pure fire for a heart. I made my way to Avernus to stop her. She fled from my reach, even climbed aboard the Mind Flayer ship as it screeched through the hells. I followed in close pursuit. I can't bear to imagine the lives Karlach might be taking, the damage she might be doing. A powerful friend with a keen interest in privacy. I'm sworn to say no more.
When I had left Wyll's tent, I carried more questions than I had brought. Karlach was no longer merely a quarry named by another man's vow. She had become a shadow on the road ahead, a life caught in the machinery of promises, devils, and reputations too easily believed. As for Wyll, I understood him no better entire, but I understood the shape of his burden more clearly. There was pride in him, yes. Performance, too, perhaps, but not emptiness. Whatever bargain had marked him, whatever strange eye watched from behind his noble bearing, he was not a man chasing blood for sport. He believed himself righteous, and that is often where danger begins. I returned to my bedroll with the Dark Amethyst still in my thoughts, and Wyll's story now added to its weight. The camp had grown quieter, but not simpler. Every companion carried a locked door somewhere within them. Some were barred by fear, some by shame, some by faith, and some, I suspected, by promises made in the dark. Astarion was not a man easily approached without caution, even at rest. He seemed arranged for escape, amusement, or violence, depending on which door opened first. Yet after the battles below the village and beneath the Windmill, I could no longer pretend that usefulness was same as understanding. He had bled with us, fought beside us, hidden more than he had confessed, and now that his secret stood near the firelight, I wished to know what shape of prison had made him what he was.
So, we're traveling with the famed Blade of Frontiers. I feel safer already. It's simple. Just find a vampire that will drink your blood and turn you into a vampire spawn. Their obedient puppet. In theory, the next step is to drink their blood. Once you've done that, you're free and a true vampire. People think the biggest threat to a vampire is a cleric with a stake. It's not. The biggest threat to a vampire is another vampire. They're scheming, paranoid, power-hungry beasts. So why would any vampire give up control over a spawn to create a competitor? Trust me, it doesn't happen.
I had thought vampirism a hunger first, and a curse second. Astarion made it sound like a chain before either. Spawn, master, obedience, the cruel arithmetic of blood given and blood denied. There was bitterness in him, yes, but beneath it lay something older than pride. The memory of being owned. It would be easy to fear him only as a predator. Easier still to dismiss him as selfish, vain, and sharp-tongued enough to cut his own shadow. But no creature made into another's puppet comes away untouched. Whatever Astarion had become, he had not chosen the beginning of it. That did not absolve him, but it did explain some of the knife work in his soul. And there was something else. Astarion had little patience for legends polished too brightly. The Blade of Frontiers seemed to amuse him, or offend him, perhaps both. I could not tell whether he distrusted Wyll's heroism because he thought it false, or because he disliked anything that still dared to shine. Either way, his contempt was useful in its fashion. A man praised by everyone should be examined twice. Lae'zel had not softened in camp. I doubted she knew the use of the word. Yet there was value in her severity. While others spoke of hope, she spoke of action. While we looked toward Halcyon as a possible cure, she looked toward her own people with the certainty of iron returning to the forge. I did not yet know whether that certainty was wisdom or upbringing, but I could not afford to ignore it.
Be wary of false promises. The missing druid, Halcyon, was it? He may be talented, but only a Githyanki's Zathis can cleanse an embedded tadpole.
Lae'zel's warning was not without reason. Halcyon had become a name we leaned upon without ever having met the man. A missing druid, a promised healer, a hope passed from one desperate mouth to another. Hope can guide, but it can also delay. Lae'zel offered no comfort, only direction. Find the Githyanki. Seek their cure. Trust discipline over woodland rumor. I did not accept her certainty entire, but neither could I dismiss it. The parasite in our skulls did not care for our preferences. There was a cure on one road and ruin on another. I would need more than faith to tell the difference. Still, Wyll remained unfinished business. Earlier I had asked him of Karlach, of the hunt that had drawn him onward, of the vows wrapped around his name like banners in a high wind. Yet one question lingered where my eye kept returning. His own eye. Strange and red, too deliberate to be mere injury. A warrior may lose flesh in battle, but not every wound is won honestly, and not every replacement is innocent.
The Blade of Frontiers at your calling. All right. What else is on your mind? A most vicious one, in fact. It's made from pure bloodstone, carved from the Galena Mountains just north of the Moonsea. A reminder that sometimes blood must be shed and sacrifices must be made. But that story is reserved for lifetime friends and calmer days.
tiny grooves spider across the eye's surface. It resembles a sanding stone used to confer with distant contacts.
A sending stone? Nothing so special, I assure you.
His breathing quickens, his jaw tenses. Wyll is keeping something from you.
The eye was bloodstone, by his telling, carved from mountains far to the north. A token of sacrifice, he said. A reminder that blood must sometimes be shed. It was a noble answer, and perhaps even a true one. Yet truth can be arranged to hide what stands behind it. When I looked closer, I saw more than ornament. Fine grooves marked its surface, delicate as script on a sealed letter. It reminded me of devices made to carry words across distance, stones that listen, stones that answer. Wyll did not welcome the question. His manner closed by degrees, like a door eased shut by a careful hand. I might have pressed him. The thing in my skull offered its own ugly path, a way to force where trust had not yet opened. I refused it. Not from weakness, from discipline. If I am to lead these people, I cannot begin by trespassing through every locked chamber of the soul. So I let the matter rest, for now. Before returning to the village, I chose another road first. Not a road of glory, nor danger, but necessity. We had survived much by courage, accident, and the mercy of quick hands. That could not remain our habit. A leader who learns nothing from a hard battle is only preparing a finer disaster for the next one. So we returned to the grove, not to seek counsel, but to prepare. The place still carried its own unease. Refugees huddled beneath borrowed safety, druids watching from behind old grievances, every face measuring how long shelter might last. Yet amid that tension, trade continued. It often does, even in fear. Boots wear thin, blades dull, arrows run out, and gold keeps its hard little language. Damon had been useful to us before, and I judged he might be useful again. I gave more than the bargain required, not from softness, but from foresight. Trust is not always born in grand vows. Sometimes it begins with fair dealing, with a coin surrendered before it must be, with a craftsman learning that your hand does not close only to take. Our purse was not deep, but neither were our dangers growing smaller. I chose carefully. A few enchanted arrows, costly enough to sting, useful enough to justify the wound. Flame, frost, storm-bound force, whatever shape they took. Each one promised that a single shot might change the terms of a fight before steel ever crossed steel. They were meant chiefly for Astarion. That choice would once have troubled me more. But the truth had become plain. With bow in hand, he had turned distance into judgment. He found openings others missed. He punished carelessness before it reached us. If I could not yet trust every shadow in the man, I could trust the arrow once he loosed it. Preparation is not always noble to look upon. Sometimes it is merely counting coins, weighing risk, and deciding which companion must be made more dangerous before the next enemy appears. When our business in the grove was finished, I felt no richer. Quite the opposite. But the party was better armed, and that mattered more. Gold left the hand easily enough. Lives did not return so readily. Only then did we turn back toward the Blighted Village, toward the broken streets, the remaining goblins, and whatever brutish powers still squatted among the ruins. The day had begun with questions in camp. It would continue with answers of a rougher kind.
Missing children. Maggie Terrance, Marcus Terrance, Mathan Deach, Rochelle Kirk.
We moved carefully, for Rone often keeps teeth in unexpected rooms. Every corner promised some remnant of cruelty, some watcher too stupid or too hungry to flee. And then we found them again. 3 ogres, vast as moving walls, occupying the village with the confidence of creatures who rarely need permission. The air changed around them. Even Lae'zel measured the distance. Even Astarion's smile sharpened with caution. They were no rabble of shrieking goblins. They were weight, appetite, violence given shoulders.
Tastes good, like bear. Dwarf better. Dwarf sweet like honey. Must you? This inane shatter pains me.
Children's game. These young should have been sparring, not making merry.
The Blighted Village had grown quieter, but quiet is not the same as empty. A few goblins still lingered among the broken stones and sagging roofs, too careless to flee, too stupid to understand that the tide had turned against them. Before we considered the ogres, we dealt with those lesser threats first.
Home tastes good, like bear. Must you? This inane shatter pains me. Oh, shut.
You sought a fight, and now you have one.
something in this heap.
Astarion did most of the work, from distance, from shadow, from angles the goblins never thought to fear. He turned their carelessness into a sentence already passed. One arrow, then another, and the village answered only with the dull collapse of bodies that had expected easier prey. There was no honor in it, perhaps, but honor is a luxury best discussed by men not surrounded by enemies.
This inane shatter pains me. Shut mouth. Head hard. Shut mouth. Head hard.
When the first stragglers were dead, we searched what remained. Supplies, coin, whatever small usefulness could be drawn from Rone. I had begun to think the ground below was cleared, until Shadowheart's eye found what mine had missed. Near the archway at the rear of the village, down by the steps, 2 more guards stood with their backs turned, unaware that death had already climbed above them. It was a small discovery, but a useful warning. The village was not finished with us yet. Danger does not always arrive roaring from the road ahead. Sometimes it waits below a stair, bored, inattentive, and all the more vulnerable for believing itself safe. I did not yet know whether we would fight the ogres or speak our way past them. But I knew this much. If steel was drawn, I would not have goblins at our backs while ogres stood before us. That is how men die in alleys, not from one great blow, but from too many small dangers arriving together. The path to the ogres lay open now, though open does not mean safe. 3 vast shapes waited among the ruins, heavy with appetite and confidence, and every step toward them carried the question I had tried to postpone. Would this be another fight? Or would cunning serve us better than blood?
Tastes like chicken. No chicken. Tastes like fish. Gentlemen, contain yourselves. This quarrel sours our feast. Besides, tastes like pork. And what surprise is this? Brothers, look here. I have eyed yet another prize. Fortune favors our bellies. Stranger, be you friend or food. The mark is her measure. Show is the brand of the absolute. Am I not astonishing? A robust diet makes for a shrewd mind, you see. I am a gourmand. And you, a delicacy. Unless you bear the mark, of course. I expect more than your word. Show me your flesh. Yes, the mark is unmistakable. How regrettable that your meat must go unsavored. Food? Food. Not food. Friend. We follow the sense of blood and gold to all lands fertile, friend. And this land proves particularly fruitful. Alas, not so much as a nibble. Food? No, not food.
Astarion had done what steel might not have done cleanly. He had walked us past 3 mountains of hunger with nothing but a lie well placed and a face too calm to doubt. The ogre believed him. Friend, not foe. Meat spared the knife because it had learned the butcher's password. I did not mistake the victory for virtue. The creatures were brutes, and the poor body at their feet argued more plainly than any sermon could. Such things do not become harmless because they have been fooled for an hour. The village would not be truly clean while they remained in it. Yet there are victories that sour the moment one reaches for them twice. To deceive an enemy in order to avoid slaughter is one matter. To accept safe passage, then strike from behind while the word friend is still warm in his mouth, is another. I could hear Astarion's argument before he made it. Advantage is advantage. A living ogre may become tomorrow's problem. Better to end the matter while their guard is lowered. Perhaps he would be right. But command is not only the choosing of useful acts, it is the choosing of what those acts make of us. So I let the ogres live. For the moment. Not from trust, not from mercy, from discipline. We had won the ground without blood, and I would not spend that victory merely because murder had become convenient. Before that uglier work below the steps, Astarion found a book among the village leavings. Its author announced with great confidence a thorough account of Baldur's Gate, that sordid jewel of the Sword Coast. Yet the page carried another hand as well, a sharper one, correcting the first with crimson impatience. The city was real enough, the account perhaps sound enough, but the map was apparently a disgrace, and some foolish claim about the Black Dragon Gate had earned particular contempt. I almost smiled at that. Even in runes, even among goblins and old blood, scholars still found ways to quarrel across ink. One writer boasting, one editor cutting him down. A poor map surviving them both. It was a small thing, but not an empty one. Books do not merely preserve truth. They preserve vanity, error, rivalry, and the bruised pride of those who believe accuracy is a form of war. I kept the lesson close. The page may speak with confidence. The margin may speak with fury. Wisdom must listen to both, and kneel to neither too quickly. The uglier work remained below the steps. 2 goblin guards still kept their lazy watch near the rear arch of the village, backs turned, careless in the shadow of larger monsters. Them we could not leave behind us. Goblins are sparks in dry grass. Ignore one, and soon the field is burning.
Picked a fight. The consequences are hardly surprising.
Take two.
Tastes good.
Take two.
The two guards below the steps died with less noise than they deserved. No grand clash followed. No horn sounded from the broken roofs. No fresh pack came shrieking from the stones. Only the rear arch of the village stood open before us, and the silence behind it felt earned. Yet I did not mistake quiet for peace. We had cleared corners, not curses. We had stripped the village of some of its teeth, but the jaw remained. Ogres still squatted among the ruins, fooled for now, not made harmless. The grove still waited under its own gathering storm. Halsin remained only a name carried by hope and doubt. The parasite kept its patient throne inside our skulls. And beneath all these troubles, beneath even the road itself, another question waited in the dark. The amethyst had not grown warmer in my keeping. If anything, it seemed colder now, as though every step through blood and dust had brought it nearer to its purpose. I had brought arrows, weighed bargains, listened to companions, spared where I might, struck where I must, and still the stone returned to my thoughts like a bell heard through water. A book waited beneath this village, not in my hands. Not yet, but waiting all the same. I had thought this day would be about clearing the road ahead. Instead, it had shown me how many roads lead inward, into companions who carry secrets behind their eyes, into enemies who can be deceived but not dismissed, into choices where honor and necessity quarrel like old scholars over a ruined page, and into knowledge, always knowledge, the kind that glitters like salvation until the hand reaches for it, the kind that asks to be opened, the kind that may not forgive the one who reads. So we left the arch behind us, and the village breathed its uneasy breath. Tomorrow would bring its own judgments. But tonight, one truth followed me back through the dark. The Dark Amethyst was no longer a prize. It was a summons. And somewhere below, a locked book had begun to answer.